The NFL has rules for everything, but some of them are so bizarre they feel straight out of a comedy sketch. We're talking rules that punish hustle, reward the wrong team, and spark endless debates among fans. Buckle up, because these are the dumbest rules in the NFL, and somehow they still exist. Part 10. No surprise onside kick rule. Let's start with what might be the most hated rule in football, the fumble out of the end zone, better known as the touchback rule. Thinking that you're inches away from scoring, you dive for the pylon and the ball slips out of your hands. Instead of your team keeping the ball, the defense, who didn't even touch it, gets rewarded with a possession at their own 20-yard line. That's right, you just went from almost scoring 6 points to handing the other team the ball. Anywhere else on the field, a fumble out of bounds means your offense keeps it at the spot it went out. But the end zone? That's a different story. Analysts often rip this rule, fans call it the dumbest thing ever, and yet the NFL refuses to change it. Honestly, it feels less like football and more like the game is trolling you. Part 9. The ground cannot cause a fumble. Now, that's one of the NFL's most confusing phrases. On the surface, it sounds like a playground excuse, right? But in pro football, it's actually written into the rulebook. Here's how it works. If a player is ruled down, knee, elbow, or body hits the turf, and then the ball pops out, it's not considered a fumble. The play's dead. Even if it looks like the ground clearly knocked the ball loose, it doesn't matter. Compare that to almost every other definition of a fumble. Ball in your hands, ball hits the ground, defense scoops it up. That's football. But nope, this rule flips that logic. Fans hate it, players hate it, and it's led to some seriously controversial calls. Honestly, the phrase alone sounds ridiculous. So the ground cannot cause a fumble? Tell that to anyone who's ever dropped their phone on concrete. What do you think about this rule? Part 8. Pass interference. The NFL's ultimate free pass. Pass interference might just be the most lopsided rule in football. Here's why defenders hate it. If they make too much contact with a receiver beyond 1 yard from the line of scrimmage, the flag comes out. And the penalty? A spot foul plus an automatic first down. That means if the foul happened 40 yards downfield, the offense gets those 40 yards, no questions asked. Now, flip it around. If the receiver commits offensive pass interference, basically pushing off or creating illegal contact, it's usually just a 10-yard penalty. That's it. The imbalance is obvious. Defenders can lose half the field in one call, while receivers lose a few steps. Know what's the worst part? Pass interference is completely subjective. These calls can't be reviewed, so whether your defense gets roasted for 50 yards or walks away clean often depends on a split-second decision from one ref. No wonder this rule sparks outrage every single week. It feels like the ultimate free pass for offenses. Part 7. The fair catch kick. Football's forgotten cheat code. Now, here's a rule so obscure that even die-hard fans sometimes forget it exists. The fair catch kick. Here's how it works. If your team makes a fair catch on a punt, instead of sending the offense onto the field, you can actually line up and attempt a free kick from that exact spot. And if it goes through the uprights, boom, 3 points, just like a field goal. The defense has to stay 10 yards back, and get this, they're not even allowed to block the kick. On paper, it sounds like the easiest 3 points in football. So why don't teams use it? Simple. Most fair catches happen way too far from field goal range. Coaches usually prefer to run a regular offensive play instead of gambling on a low-percentage long-distance kick. That's why this rule is rarely seen in action. In fact, the last successful fair catch kick didn't happen until December 2024 after decades of total rarity. Part 6. The Palpably Unfair Act, the NFL's wildcard rule. If you think some NFL rules are vague, wait until you hear this one. The Palpably Unfair Act rule. Basically, it gives referees the power to throw a flag on literally anything they decide is ridiculously unfair. That's not me exaggerating, that's the actual language. Picture this, a player runs off the bench mid-play to tackle someone, or a coach grabs a guy's leg on the sideline. Not technically written into the standard rules, but still completely unfair, right? That's when the Palpably Unfair Act rule kicks in. The refs can award penalties, yardage, or even touchdowns if they think it restores fairness. Know what's the crazy part? It's wildly subjective. There's no set yardage or specific penalty tied to it. The ref just decides what feels right. That means this rule is like the emergency fire alarm, rarely used but capable of totally flipping a game when it is. It's the NFL's ultimate catch-all and probably the most dangerous phrase in the entire rulebook. Part 5. The Forbidden Challenge. Football's double whammy penalty. Here's a rule that feels like it's straight out of a bad sitcom. The Forbidden Challenge double whammy. In the NFL, certain plays, like scoring plays and turnovers, are automatically reviewed by officials. That means coaches don't need to challenge them. But if a coach forgets and throws the red challenge flag anyway, oh boy, not only is the challenge denied, but their team gets slapped with a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So basically, you're punished twice, once for wasting a challenge you didn't need, and again for daring to question the almighty replay system. Imagine losing field position just because your coach got a little too eager with the red flag. Brutal. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, fans lose their minds. One tiny mistake on the sideline can cost a team an entire drive's worth of yardage. In a league where inches decide games, the Forbidden Challenge rule might just be the harshest gotcha in the book. Part 4. The NFL Fashion Police. Stockings and Pants Rule. Of all the rules in football, this one might be the pettiest. Stockings and pants specifications. Yep, the NFL doesn't just care about how players play, it cares about how they dress. According to the rulebook, players' pants must fully cover their knees, and stockings must be worn in a very specific way. No bare skin between the socks and the pants, no sagging, no shortcuts. If a player dares to break the dress code, boom, penalties, fines, and even being told to leave the game until the uniform is fixed. And yes, we're talking about grown men getting pulled off the field for showing a little knee. Imagine losing your star wide receiver for a drive because his socks weren't regulation height. The NFL says it's about professionalism and protecting players, but most fans roll their eyes. With all the chaos happening on the field, does anyone really care if a guy's kneecap is showing? Apparently, the league does. Part 3. The Illegal Leverage Rule. No piggyback blocks allowed. Here's a rule that sounds almost like playground etiquette. The Illegal Leverage Rule. Basically, defenders aren't allowed to climb, stand, or launch themselves off a teammate or even an opponent to get extra height when trying to block a kick. No piggyback rides, no human springboards. On paper, it makes sense. The NFL wants to keep things safe and fair. If players were allowed to stack up like cheerleaders during a field goal attempt, not only would it be chaos, but it could also lead to some nasty injuries. That's why the penalty is steep. 15 yards, and if it's on the defense, an automatic first down. The thing is, this rule doesn't come up often, but when it does, it's huge. There have been games where one rare leverage penalty completely flipped the outcome, handing new life to an offense that should have been stopped. Fans argue over how consistently it's enforced, but one thing's for sure, in the NFL, no piggyback blocks are allowed. Part 2. The No Challenge Zone, when coaches get flagged for trying. Here's one that makes coaches sweat bullets. No coaches' challenges for certain plays. In the NFL, some moments, like scoring plays, turnovers, and anything in the final 2 minutes, are automatically reviewed by the booth. Sounds fair, right? But here's the kicker. If a coach throws their red challenge flag on one of these plays, it's not just ignored, it's punished. That's right, coaches can actually be hit with a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for trying to challenge something already under automatic review. So instead of giving their team another shot at a call, they end up gifting the opponent free yardage. It's the ultimate sideline backfire. Fans hate this one because it feels like punishing effort. Coaches are wired to fight for their teams, but the moment they forget the fine print of the rulebook, the league smacks them with a double whammy. In a game where every yard matters, this rule turns one small mistake into a giant setback. Part 1. NFL Overtime. 2 rulebooks, 1 league. Overtime in the NFL isn't as straightforward as you'd think because the league actually runs on 2 different sets of rules. In the regular season, overtime is just a single 10-minute period. Both teams are guaranteed a possession, even if the first team scores a touchdown. But if nobody wins after that, the game ends in a tie. Yep, players walk off the field, fans go home, and the standings get that awkward 0.5 in the record column. But in the playoffs, ties aren't an option. Overtimes become unlimited with full 15-minute periods played until someone finally wins. Both teams are guaranteed at least one possession to keep things fair, which has already delivered some absolute classics. This split rulebook is meant to balance player safety in the regular season with all-or-nothing excitement in the playoffs. But for fans, it can be confusing. The NFL is the only sport where you literally have to ask, wait, which overtime rules are we playing by today? Which one do you think is the dumbest? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around because football always has more weirdness to uncover.